Hello, hello, hello. Leeds, can you hear us knocking? Happy Monday to you all, and the reason you're listening to my devilishly handsome middle-class voice is that you're listening to the Fulham Focus podcast. 3 points, 3 massive, massive points against a Blackburn side that were 10 undefeated at home. And look at the table now. Join me, Baldo, and Dom on the other side of this as we discuss more Ewood on the Metroleum Fire. Off we go.
This is Neil Smith, and you are listening to Fulham Focus Podcast.
Fulham.
All right, guys. An amazing 3 points away from home at Ewood Park. That has made the table now after West Brom's victory over Millwall. West Brom, 59 points. Leeds United, 55 points, joint with us, the Fulham, with 55 points at third. Nottingham Forest in 54, and Brentford in 53, and Preston North End in 50. All right, let's talk about this match, and let's start with the opening lineup. Matt, Dom, the lineup pretty unchanged, but there was a turn of Mr. Tim Ream and some other things to mention. What were your thoughts when you saw the lineup, mate?
Oh, I couldn't believe he was there, given that he'd played his last game against Man City, as everyone seemed to think. But yeah, good to see Ream back. I think alongside a kind of better in the air centre back, he's really useful to have. Dennis Adoy at right back again, which I think is easily his best position. And I've shared my thoughts on Adoy in the past at centre back. I don't think he's very good there, but at right back, I'm more than happy with him there. Kind of the rest of it sort of, the team kind of picked itself, didn't it, really? I think Kevin McDonald will come on into later, but he's kind of an ever-present really now, shielding the defence and, the same kind of attacking front four as you'd expect with Mitre there leading the line. So, happy with it. I think it's as good as it could have been.
Nice one. And, you say the team picks itself there. Mr. Rees, hello, mate. Would you say that Christie had been a tiny bit unfairly treated for this game being dropped?
Leeds are falling. Sorry, I've had that song stuck in my head all weekend. It's funny. Yeah, absolutely. Bollocks, I was making a joke that I forgot what your original point was. Sorry, what was it?
No, it's just
Christie,
about...
wasn't it?
Don't worry, it was really funny. You can talk about Christie being dropped.
Christie, yeah, it's a bit weird with Christie because I think I said this earlier on in the season that basically he, for the first time, he actually had some competition at right back, and that sort of made him up his game somewhat. Whereas now it doesn't seem like he has any sort of competition at right back, and now Dennis Adoy is not really making any major threat to that position. So yeah, it's a slightly weird. Sorry, Christie, but he did a good job. No real complaints there. Just want to touch on the centre backs though. I'm wondering, when are we going to start seeing Terence Kongola? I know we're going to talk about him later on in the show, but I just want to know, when do you guys think we're going to start trusting Kongolo to start games for us? I have this sort of theory that maybe he's still having some bedding in time, as it were. So that's why Tim Ream went straight back into the starting lineup despite his red card, and let's face it, he hasn't exactly been the greatest so far. Do you think that maybe it's because, Kongolo's been gradually brought back into the team and maybe in a couple of weeks' time that he'll be a regular starter, or is there something else behind it?
I just think there's no real reason to change it at the moment. I mean, I know we've said Tim Ream hasn't been having the best time of it lately, but the defence as a whole have been playing really well in the league. So it's that Scott's kind of come across a formula that works. I think Hector's made a huge difference. McDonald shielding and Rodak in goal. And I think that as a unit are kind of the benchmarks that we can go from, really. I think bringing in another new player is potentially unnecessary at the moment. And that's a shame for Kongola because we don't know. He's a good player by all accounts and we haven't seen much of him we thought we were going to, but the winning is what matters, really.
I agree, and I also think that a whole new centre-back pairing that only started in January, with Hector coming in January and then Kongola, it just might be a little bit too soon. I think, as you said, it's definitely a bedding-in period. But Kongola did make his appearance, around the 80th minute or so for 5 at the back. We'll come on to that. Let's talk about, the sort of rough outline of this game, it was a tough game. I mean, really well drilled. I mean, it almost looked to a point that we looked quite out of ideas. But do you think that's arguably down to just the tactics from Blackburn Rovers, no, let's go to Mr. Reese.
Yeah, every single cliche that you want to say about the Championship, there are no easy games, or the home side is very well organised. Basically, every single cliche that gets thrown around about Championship teams, you could more or less put on this game, and it was incredibly frustrating. And they did have us worried at times. And I think maybe there is a sense of we have one style of play, and I think it's something that Scott Park has been criticised for a bit in the past. We have one style, we have a plan A, but we don't have a plan B. And if it takes us so long to break these sort of teams down, then dare I say it, you look at Brentford, for instance, the fact that they've managed to get such a great goal difference because they are tearing teams apart, whereas we, for the most part, are scraping out 1-0, 2-1 wins, whereas we could really be using that goal difference. So maybe it is time to start implementing a plan B to get more goals on the board, not just for the obvious to get wins, but obviously to help out our goal difference.
Yeah, I mean, for a while it looked like it was Charlton all over again, and over the years in the Championship, we have struggled against teams who are well organised and hard to break down. And we didn't create a lot, but we were well worth a win, I thought. And the difference that we didn't have against Charlton was Mitro, and he was there, had a chance in the box, turned and put it in the corner, and that's sometimes what you need. But generally, the fact that we're earlier in the season when we were conceding a lot of goals, when our attack wasn't performing, it was much more of an issue because we were having to score 2 or 3 goals to win every game, and it wasn't happening. But the fact now that even if our attack maybe not as good as we all think it should be, the fact that we're now starting to keep clean sheets is really important, because at least we're not losing the games, and a lot of the time we only need 1 to win. 1-0 away from home is a really excellent result in this league, actually, considering Blackburn hadn't lost in the league since I think it was September before that. It's a great result.
Yeah, but one thing, and this is something I've been talking about in my work, as I cover Nottingham Forest for a living, and they're in the same boat as us. They've been sort of grinding out 1-0 margins, one goal scorelines. That's what I mean. Can either of you remember the last time we won a game by more than 1 goal? Could either of you remember it? It was Derby back at the end of November, 3-0.
Really?
And my point about this is, if we're only winning games by 1 goal margins, that means we basically have to fight for 90 minutes, because that means that the other team are going to start coming at us later on. We have to keep up for 90 minutes. Whereas, for instance, the Millwall game, the reverse fixture, which was 4-0, 4-1, I can't quite remember. It was a heavy victory, that's what I remember. But basically, for the last 15 minutes or so, we can sort of take our foot off the gas, as it were, and sort of, rest for the last 15 minutes, and then so we're not entirely tired when we go into the next game. And that's something I think we need to start doing more. Back to my earlier point about beating teams consistently and thoroughly and heavily. That's the word I want to beat them heavily. Is that we're into the business end of the season, we're going to need all the energy we can get. And if we're still having to grind out games, as it were, that means we're going to get tired towards the end of the season, and that's my main concern.
No, I completely agree, and it's interesting because I feel like we were on the front foot for the first few moments of the game. I think we had 3 corners in the first opening 12 minutes. But going to your point about how defensively we have completely tied up, and let's talk quickly about Michael Hector, the great Michael Hector, one last time. I mean, I noticed in this game, he's not only, very good at being our right-sided centre-back, but he's not afraid to go forward either. He made lots of runs into the box from open play. And I just want to ask you, Mr. Matt Domm, do you think it's too early to get ahead of ourselves and say he's our favourite centre-back we've had for at least 2 to 3 years?
Slightly too early, but
okay.
He's got all the ingredients, I think. You look at, I think he's already had more good games than Richard Stearman has for us, or Sean Hutchinson did for us, or all, Ragnar Sigurdsson, all of these in the Championship. So he's already asserting himself on games much more than any of those did. So it's a fair shout. And the point about attacking as well, I think is one way when we're struggling to break teams down and they're marking man for man, they've got 10, 11 behind the ball. A good way of opening teams up is having that centre back who can drive forward, and Callas was really good at that for us. And it was actually a goal against Millwall when we beat them away last time we went up, the last goal where he sort of powered his way through and passed it to Mitro, who scored. Seeing a centre back do that it creates all sorts of panic, and the organisation sometimes goes to pot from the team who's defending it. So I'm all for that. I think he's been excellent, and if he keeps this up for the season, then he's easily our best centre back since we went down. If he carries on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've just seen a tweet actually from Carl Passion, at Carl Passion 1, take a bow. But he says, Hector has been superb addition, but somehow a bit of credit needs to go to the wonderful K-Mac, who has been so instrumental since his return to the team. In my honest opinion, our best player during the promotion season and someone who's had a raw deal since. Mr. Rees, let's talk about, he had quite a slow game in this one, but it's just unbelievable how better we are with K-Mac in the squad. I think since Villa, it's not just the Hector aspect of things, it's also K-Mac who joined him at the same time, I think.
Yeah, and I think I've been pretty staunch in my defence of Kevin McDonald, more or less since last season in the Premier League. I thought, he said he got a raw deal. I thought he got treated absolutely terribly in the whole thing. I said that the team that started the playoff final against Aston Villa would have had a much better shot at staying in the division than the team we eventually ended up with like Ankisa and Seri and all that piddle and crap. I think Kevin McDonald, and again, it's something we've talked about a lot on this show. It's not just his tactical, what he does on the pitch. There's also that leadership to him, and I think that's something that we have missed all season. And the fact that he's started to come into the lineup, and an old calm, cool head. Again, going back to all the cliches. You need a guy like that in the in defensive midfield just to marshal the troops around somewhat, and particularly given we've talked about our let's say not porous, but let's say not exactly the greatest defense. I think having him in front of that back line as well, organising things really, really does help things a lot on the defensive side of the ball.
I completely agree. He's just a calm head in defence, and technically knows he's not the best player on the ball. Technically, he knows he's not the fastest player, but he's aware of his limitations, and he can read the game so well because of that. And he's absolutely important, so vital to the way we've been defending recently. And I saw online that his stats this season, or our stats this season, with him starting games, he started 10 games for us, and we've won 8 of them. Lost 1, which is the opening game of the season against Barnsley, and I think the draw was against Charlton. So it just shows the results how important he is to that team.
Indeed, and he's also incredibly, vocally our biggest player on the pitch, which takes a lot of heat off Kearney, who, when he's playing as the team captain, gets criticised a lot for not actually being vocal enough. So when K-Mac's on there, it actually feels, like a far more balanced setup. Another thing about K-Mac is it allows a certain player to be a lot freer and not worry too much about the things going on behind him. Now, look, we can mention more obvious things like Rodak being brilliant with a huge save near the end of the game, or Bobby Reid going up and down the pitch like a cocker spaniel, a fouling cocker spaniel at that, or, Josh Onuma being great as our box-to-box man. But Joe Bryan has been able to bomb forward while Kevin McDonald has been protecting that, back line. And Bryan, we all know Bryan defensively isn't perfect, but he's now becoming a huge threat on the wing. I think that's 2 assists in 2 games. How happy are we that the Watford rumours were a bunch of crap, Mr. Rees? And, just give me the sort of the Bryan, the winger versus Bryan, the fullback argument, if you will.
I feel if I'm meant to be praising Joe Bryan, isn't that meant to be your role, seeing as you've been his biggest supporter since more or less before we before we were even linked to him. I feel like I should yield the floor over to you, sir. I think this is very much your specialist subject.
I just think he's great, to be honest.
But no. On a serious point, I think this is he's arguably one of the best left backs in the whole of the championship, and we're seeing. I don't think we've still quite worked out precisely what his role could or should be. Everyone's talked about, should he be a winger? Whilst we bring in, any other left back, maybe shifting Tim Ream over there, whatever it is, or have him as a wing back or have him as a fullback. We still don't quite know what it is, but whilst he's still doing what he's doing, just keep doing what he's doing. I don't change anything that isn't broke. To that extent, he's been absolutely superb. Maybe this is another case of, with most of the team compared to the Premier League, maybe this is their level, as it were. But I still feel like it should be you that should be saying this. Maybe you can have the closing argument after Mr. Domm says some more words.
I mean, you've loaded a question there for us to say how good he is, haven't you? Let's face it. How good is Joe Bryan? Off you go. Right.
No, I mean, the thing is, no, go on. You say your bit, and I'll say.
I just wanted to add that I think he's definitely a left back. I don't want to see him as a winger because, in much the same way, kind of the opposite way as Sessegnon was, I could only see him as a winger, not a left back, because of the way he drifted into space in the box. Joe Bryan, his strong point is his delivery from deep, and his ability to get down the line and cross it from the byline. And he playing from left back, he has that option to go up and down the pitch. And fine, he's not as good defensively as we might want him to be, but he's an attacking fullback, and he's playing to his strengths at the moment, and he's been brilliant.
He's been brilliant, and it's funny you mentioned Sess there, because even though Sess was more of a winger than a left back, I find the Brian Mitro relationship quite similar in the sense of what the sort of assisting that's been going on recently. But I find personally that Joe Bryan has been really pivotal ever since that McDonald came in. And that's because he has that cover now. I don't think Joe Bryan is a perfect defender, but going forward, he offers us so much. Now, let's talk about the goal that he assisted in the 65th minute. Now, this is a huge goal. One goal that basically we needed a goal in this game that was going to either be very special or because it was just one of those games where we weren't sure how it was going to turn. And it was a classic example of whatever the first goal is, it wins the game. Now, there was a very funny celebration between Mitrovic and Joe Bryan as I think a ventriloquist dummy sort of celebration. But in this game, I thought Mitrovic was looking a bit slow and a bit, laboured up until the point in which he scored. And just basically, Dom, I know you love Mitrovic. Just send us some love this way for him.
I think he was the difference. As you say, when things get a bit crowded, and he hasn't got runners around him, then he's not at his best, and he's not the sort of player who can run in behind and stretch the defence. But getting the ball around the penalty spot, you don't want anyone else in this league in that position than Mitro to finish it off. Similar to the Charlton game, I think we had a few chances like that and we couldn't put them away without him in the team. But he's huge. He's there to finish chances, and that's what he did.
How many goals is he on now, Reece? Do you know?
I believe because I think the Fulham account tweeted after. I think that's him on 20 in the league. I think.
Yeah, that's right.
It's around that mark. That much.
Same as Ollie Watkins.
Ollie Watkins. Oh yeah, that's right. That's so weird. Where did that come from?
I mean, they score 5 goals every week, don't they? So that's probably.
Well, yeah, fair play. But you know what? I just that you see sort of. Paddy Power and all these sort of big sites now sort of tweeting about Mitrovic, we need to go up this season, lads, or we are going to lose him. But let's talk about the substitutions really quickly, because they happened quite late for this one, quite unusual for Scott Parker. I mean, it was around the 81st minute that Josh Onomah came off for Congolo, where we finally saw him, and lo and behold, we go to a back 5. Tom Kearney for Johansson in the 86th minute, and Cavallero for Abubakar Kamara in the 90th. Before I ask if these were good subs or not, how do you think Tom Kearney played in this match, Mr. Baldo?
I'm hesitant to say anything about Tom Kelly based off what we've been saying about him in the group, and I don't want to go down those lines. He did okay. He did what he needed to do. He created some opportunities. He's still, for whatever reason, he's still not quite the Tom Kearney we saw in the promotion season, or even the even the season before that when we lost to Reading in the playoffs. I don't know what it is, but there's still that little thing. We had him in brief spurts at the start of the season, but there's just something missing about him, and I can't quite put my finger. He's not quite as clinical in the final third as he could and really should be.
Yeah, I think they came too late. I think it is one of the
substitutions.
Things,
you mean
the substitutions? Yeah, I think it's one of the things for me that I want to see Scott Parker improve on. Players that came on, I've got no problem with what he did. I just think it should have been earlier, because we got ahead. He obviously he's the sort of manager I think who wants to defend the lead rather than go for the second goal. I think we should be going for the second goal personally, and I don't really think we should be sitting back so much. But I can't argue that it seems to work. I'd like to see the changes happen a bit closer to the goal, really, because the game had changed at that point. We knew they were going to come at us, and I'd have brought on perhaps some pace up. I would have brought Kamara on at that point to maybe try and get a second goal on the break or something like that. But that's. I mean, I can't complain too much, really.
No, I'm glad you brought this up, and I'm going to throw this straight back to you, Mr. Domm. I mean, how do you feel when we generally go 5 at the back? And I'll bring this to you in a minute, Reece, as well, because to be honest with me, and I don't know if it's just being a Fulham fan and always being quite paranoid, but it scares the shit out of me because, and we're very astute at it now. We are. They brought on 3 strikers, in the end of it, and 2 of them at the same time. Parker is apparently wanting to change the club mentality of Fulham, the law of sod feeling of Fulham, apparently, and he's wanting us to make us grittier and turn on that Sam Allardyce tap when we can. But do you honestly feel, Mr. Matt Domm, when those gates are closed, that nothing's going through? Because I do feel, like you said, we are really shooting ourselves in the foot. Because when we go forward with 5 at the back in the last 10 minutes of the game, there is just only one person going up there, really. It always feels like the final of Wembley again.
Yeah, I mean, it's at the point once you finally take the lead. Blackburn wanted a 0-0 out of that game. Once they went behind, they then obviously need to come forward, otherwise they lose 1-0. I don't really have a problem with 5 at the back. I think it's suited to our players. It's what it suggests that we're going to do is sit back and defend deep. And like I say, it has been working, but I just don't think it's the right thing to do when you're 1-0 up away from home, because we want to win that 2-0 on the break, really, because they throw everything at us. And I want to see us leave space up front and attack it. And they're vulnerable. They're suddenly not, we couldn't get through with 11 at the back when they were defending with everyone. And now we've got a chance to kill the game off, and that's what I want to see us doing. But it's working, so like I said, I can't complain too much about it.
Yeah, it's working. I just constantly feel like we're going to shoot ourselves in the foot towards the latter stages of the season. I mean, if Johansson scored that opportunity that he missed towards the end, we'd be like, "Oh, brilliant! That was a fantastic move by Parker." But it stayed 1-0, and it was still a good move. But I always felt like we were in danger of potentially conceding, and then
we still needed Rodak, didn't we? Let's face it.
Indeed. That's the point I'm trying to make. And it's just quite a scary proposition every time we do it. Reece, what are your thoughts on this? Do you feel completely comfortable when we go 5 at the back, or shut up shop, as it were? Or do you feel that actually we need to be just a little bit more careful and actually have a bit more impetus to go forward, even when it's like the latter stages of a match?
I'm okay with 5 at the back, and I think there's going to come a time, probably when Congolo is a bit more, used to the situation. I can honestly see us starting with 5 at the back going forward. You've got Brian and Christie starting. I honestly can. Brian and Christie as the fullbacks. Hector probably is the right centre back. Probably Ream as the centre back and then Congolo as the left centre back. I can honestly see that being the plan going forward. How you work out the rest of the team, I honestly don't know, but I think that is going to be, if that is eventually going to be the way we play. Do I feel confident about it? Yes, because it's a very defensive minded formation, and we do it to shut up shop. So hopefully, it means we won't be conceding as many goals in the latter part of the season. But as you mentioned, when we go 5 at the back, that does mean we sort of lose an emphasis in attack. What's that going to do for the rest of the season? We'll just have to wait and see. But certainly on it as a defensive aspect, I have absolute faith in it. But what happens going forward, we'll just have to wait and see. Maybe that's when we see the likes of Brian and Christie or any others. Maybe Stefan. I'll go to my grave not knowing how to pronounce his name. The other Sessegnon as the other wing back. Maybe he'll chip in as well as a wing back. I don't know going forward. So yeah, I can very much see that being the thing going forward.
Nice. Well, taking on what you just said, Dom, would you say that this team has its own sort of brand now? I mean, we used to call it Diet Slav, and not a very good one at that. But it feels like, personally, I feel like this is everything I wanted from Parker a bit now. I wanted sort of like a Lee Johnson mold type of manager who can adapt to each game, who can sort of turn on the attacking flair, but also turn on the Sam Allardyce, Tony Pulis shut up shop sort of thing. Do you think now we're actually seeing Scott Parker in his sort of element? And is that to do you think, with players being fit or just a general gelling starting to occur?
Yeah, I think naturally he's more of a defensive-minded manager. I think he tried earlier in the season to get us to play like Slav, really, but we didn't quite have the same players. We didn't have the same attacking fullbacks. But he's realised he's found a formation and solution that that kind of works defensively, and I'm okay with that. I would like to see more goals. I'd like to see more from our attacking players, because I still think we have the strongest front four in the league. So I'd like to see more from that.
It is tricky, isn't it? Sorry.
So I'm fine with grinding out wins when it's appropriate, which is a tricky away 1-0 win is great. But I want to see us open teams up more when we're far superior to them.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to sound spoiled on the whole subject, because I mean, we're very lucky. We're third, for fuck's sake. But what I mean is that you see teams like Brentford absolutely scoring for fun at the moment. I mean, their goal difference is ridiculous, as Baldwin said, and yet our front three should be capable of doing the same thing. So there's a lot more. We're very, very conservative about how we go about things at the moment, which is good. It's grinding out results. It's a hard ground. I get it. But I agree. I would like to see us be a bit more bold. And who knows, maybe it'll happen at Millwall, maybe it won't. Last question to you.
Sorry. Maybe it starts with, stopping the goals going in. And maybe then he builds a platform to be more attacking. But yeah, we'll see. We're going up the league. We're in with a shout of automatic promotion. So whatever he's doing is working.
Lovely, yeah. And last question before the Parker rating to you, Mr. Rees. Everyone is still saying, Frenchie's saying it, for instance, that we still haven't clicked yet, and we're third. Even when we're winning, people are saying we still haven't clicked yet. Are you expecting us to suddenly demolish teams a lot better than we have in, the last 15 games that we have left? And why do you think that, potentially?
No, I think that this Fulham team that you're seeing is going to be the Fulham. Changing Congolo when it eventually doesn't happen. No, I can't see there being this sudden switch that all of a sudden we do start banging goals in left, right, and centre. I think this grinding out results. I can see that being the method and the style of play going forward. And quite frankly, am I worried? Yes, because I still think there's a lot of inconsistency in this squad, and given the fact that we're so close to the top part of the top two in the league, as we record, that's really just going to cause so many problems over. Look at what Leeds are doing. Look at what West Brom, to an extent, did over the past couple of games. I don't think that there's anything in this team that makes me think that we can go on a 23-game run as we did last time, just because of there's still a few flaws in this team. and our lack of attacking threat minus Mitrovic being probably being one of them.
Yeah, I completely agree, Baldo, and I know where you're coming from. I would like us to see more goals, but I think now our style for the rest of the season, or maybe for the rest of the time we have Scott Parker, is get the goal, maybe potentially a second, and then shut up shop. I don't think we're actually going to be as swashbuckly as we ever once were with, Slavisa Jokanovic in 17-18. Now, let's have your Parker ratings, gentlemen, before we move on to the Millwall preview. Mr. Dom, what would you give Mr. Parker out of 10?
I'm going to go with an 8. I don't think you can give lower than an 8 for any away win in this league, to be honest. The way he set us up, and the way we played, we were never likely to be losing that. I don't think there was ever in doubt that we were going to lose this game. It was whether we were going to manage to find a way through, which we did in the end. I'd like to see us, like we discussed earlier, I'd like to see us kind of go for the kill towards the end when the other team has to come at us a bit more. But an 8, because he couldn't have done a lot better, really, given the circumstances, and it was a really good win.
That makes me feel kind of guilty now because I'm going to give a 7 because just because it wasn't anything fancy, it wasn't anything special, it was just routine. So as sort of the norm, I think the norm in newspaper whenever they give player ratings for these things, usually a standard performance usually gets a 6. This is probably just slightly higher than standard, nothing really special. We got the win, so that earns him a bit of a point. But at the same time, it wasn't exactly the greatest performance. So I can't give more than a 7. So I'm afraid, Mr. Domm are on very contrasting sides of the argument there.
So
all right,
you've gone with the standard win away from home at a place where they've lost twice before that this season, maybe. I don't think that's routine. I don't think many teams will win 1-0 there this season. So there we go.
And for that reason, I'm going to give him a 9, just because I'm in a good mood, and the Leeds result was just beautiful to see straight after the game. All right, guys. After this, we'll have
hang on.
No, go on.
You're giving him a 9 because Leeds lost later.
Yeah, I'm just feeling it. I'm in a good. Yeah, it made. Yeah, I just thought, well, why not? Yeah, I think I'd give him a 9 for this, and not just because of the result and how grindy it was, and also just generally the Leeds occurrence afterwards. I just think generally his man management has been very good, and bringing Kevin McDonald back into the team has been a spot of genius. And I think, honestly, I don't know, Frenchie thinks we're going to win this league. I'm not too sure how you guys feel. We'll talk about that in a minute after this.
Fulham.
All right, guys. So Millwall, Wednesday night, huge game, massive game. And you've got Leeds versus Brentford on the Tuesday. Or is it Brentford versus Leeds? Well, who cares? But the point being, this is a very big game, and they just lost against West Brom this evening. It's Sunday night. So hopefully they're in a good place for us to actually get an away win, another away win. Let's talk about the stats that Mr. Stato has sent to us. Mr. Matt Domm, what can you tell us about Millwall in this game?
They've become a very Gary Rowett side for me, and this really concerns me because historically we've had poor results against Gary Rowett's teams. That being with is another difficult away game. I don't know. I'm not trying to be negative about it or anything, but he seems to have our number, and he seems to have that kind of that similar difficult to break down thing that we struggle with against Charlton and Blackburn, but also a threat usually going forward from the air, from set pieces, that kind of thing. So they're a strong side with a couple of ex-Fulham players, and that's always, I live in perennial fear of former Fulham players coming back to score against us. I think Matt Smith has got something like let me have a look here. 7 goals, 4 assists this season. 4 of those goals have been headers, which you might expect. I think he's a big threat. I think that the fact we've got Michael Hector now makes me feel a lot more comfortable about that. But him, and I think Stuart Hutchinson's chipped in with quite a few goals this season as well. He's got He's got 4. He's their 4th highest scorer. So that threat from set pieces is a concern to me. And they're very much a side in Gary Rowett's mould.
100%. And you talk about, Gary Rowett's record against Fulham. The first time was, in League Two in the 13-14 season. We played Burton Albion in the Cup, the League Cup, and it was 2-2, which was an annoying result. Then he was, manager of Birmingham City in 14-15, and that was a 1-1 draw at the Cottage. Then 15-16, again with Birmingham, he beat us 5-2 at the Cottage. And then the other game that season was 1-1. Then, 16-17, they beat us again at the Cottage, Birmingham 1-0. And 16-17, Derby County beat us at Derby 4-2. 17-18, a draw. And, he's really got our number, like you say. And I just want to also ask to you, Mr. Rees, what we can expect from this game, statistics-wise, anything that pops out to you.
I really want to add on the point that Matt Domm brought in, and with Matt Smith being so dominant in the air as we know he can be. Obviously, Michael Hector will help somewhat, and I think we talked about it earlier. I really think this should be the ideal time to bring Terence Congolo in, because I think he's 6'2", so he's going to add a little bit more of a physical presence in there. So a Hector Congolo partnership should ideally be the partnership, specifically for this game, but then going forward as well. Adding to that, Jed Wallace is a player I think really, really highly of. Similar to your love affair for Jared Bowen, I think Wallace is a player that we should have been looking at some stage, not just this season, but in the past. And he's their top scorer, 10 goals, 9 assists. And again, if you think of most of the players probably going to go through Matt Smith, and he's probably going to be the one that's going to be providing it. So you got to think we got to shut the supply line down, and that will probably be Jed Wallace. So I think he's going to be the key man, one of the key men to watch on Wednesday.
Well, you talk about going through Matt Smith. You got Tom Bradshaw, who's a striker that scored 8 goals, and when he plays, it's normally alongside Matt Smith in a classic little or large strike partnerships. So, I mean, and for you, Mr. Domm, is there a certain player that you feel like we should be watching out for, or is it just Sean Hutchinson? Do you think the curse of the Fulham defender returning to haunt us?
No, like I said, it's Matt Smith, the return of the curse player for me. I think we haven't dealt well with height, particularly earlier in the season. Hector should help there, but he's bound to get a few chances on goal with his head, I think. So it's a difficult one. I think we'll do well to keep them out. I know they're not a particularly good side, but we're not a very good side defensively against set pieces generally. So it's going to be very interesting. Yeah, Matt Smith will be the concern for me.
It's going to be interesting. Let's look at the stats versus Fulham Millwall in the last game. Lots of possession, lots of passes, but we didn't actually create that much. Only 3 registered through balls all game. We had 19 crosses in total. That's actually pretty low considering we had 1,000 passes. But 44% of action only happened in the middle of the pitch. 47% of Millwall's attacks came down the right-hand side. So that's something for Joe Bryan to get a bit scared about. We need make sure how we have maybe Jmac filling in that little hole. And, cause for concern for Brian, like I just said, especially if their key man Wallace is also playing out on the right-hand side of midfield. And, I think you're right, Reese. We could see Congolo in this game for sure. And just something I want to mention as well, something that Danny was adamant that we talk about, and Frenchie on the group. The pitch looks like a pile of shit. And I was just thinking what you think of the pitch and how you'd like to see us line up, or what sort of players would work better for this sort of environment, Mr.
Domm? We don't really have any players who can
that wear Wellington boots
with the shit pitch and who lumps it forward. It's a trick one. I think Micho is going to be key, as he always is. He might be having to deal with more headers in the air than he might usually, but it's a bog, and that could be difficult for our possession game. But at the same time, we look a bit more effective with less of the ball recently. So I think just at the right time, we're sort of learning how to deal with attacking a bit more directly. So hopefully that can shine through.
Any players you'd like to see for this game? Mr. Rees, do you think that maybe Stefan Johansson would be perfectly suited for this sort of game at the Den, or maybe Abubakar Kamara instead of Bobby Reed in the sort of the muddy, trench-like environment that is the Den, apparently?
Oh, Abubakar Kamara, just the mention of his name fills me with joy. On a serious note, though, I think I mentioned Terence Congolo earlier. I think he's probably going to be the main one to ask for. Stefan Johansson as well, to do his usual disruptiveness. As what Matt, touching on what Matt Dom said, there's no real speciality players that we have that you could really bank on in what we assume will be the same sort of conditions on a terrible pitch. So it doesn't exactly make for positive reading, but we should be able to come out of this with very decent enough results. One would hope.
I think we might see Anthony Knockaert play. He likes to shoot. Bobbly pitches tend to be difficult for keepers from shots from distance, so there might be a chance that he can kind of bobble one in front of the keeper and score a goal. Who knows? But he's the sort of player I think we could do attacking wise. We could do with him in this game, just because he wants to score and he loves to shoot, and I think that could be key.
Yeah, I think Knockaert would be very interesting to see in this game, and I'd like to see Abubakar Kamara in this sort of feisty environment that we're definitely going to endure, because it's Gary Rowett. Also, it's Millwall. They're very pissed off that we won 4-1 the last time we met them, and they just generally really, really hate us. But they hate everyone, so they really need to just relax, to be honest. So the last time we ever lost to Millwall overall came in the 2014-2015 season, and it's when we lost 1-0 at the Cottage. So, Mr. Rees, can I have your score prediction for this one, please?
You may. I'm going to go with a 2-1 Fulham victory, again, just because I still don't see enough of an attacking threat from us that makes me think we're going to be able to steamroll them in the same way that we did previously, and with Gary Rowett, much more organised side. So yeah, I can see it being a bit of a scrape as well. So 2-1.
All right, 2-1. And for you, Mr. Domm?
I was going to say the same, but I'm going to go with 3-1. I think there are concerns, but I think our kind of rise in form is timed nicely with their dip in form, and I think we're just a better team. So hopefully that will shine through in the end.
Okay, so we got 2-1, 3-1. So I'm going to say 2-1. So we all seem to think there's going to be a goal that's going to be conceded. And actually, there's something we forgot to mention, that there is a possibility that Terence Congolo is injured. I think he had a bit of a niggle towards the end of the game, but obviously our football club is completely tight-lipped on any type of injury that occurs. So maybe he's fine. We'll see. But yeah, huge game. I'll be really, really getting absolutely smashed if we win this one. I mean, like, more than I was the other night. But what I will say is, really quickly, is, Dom, do you think we can actually win this league? We talked about automatics. Do you think we can actually win this league and overtake West Brom at any point? Final question to you, sir.
Yeah, I think so. I think anyone in the top 5, is it, at the moment, potentially could go.
It's just never. I mean, I can't. Yeah, I just can't remember a time it's been this tight in the Championship. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. Have you, Mr. Rees?
Arguably, our season when we went up, the fight that we had, I think Wolves eventually ran away with it, but we pushed them to quite large stages, and then Cardiff and us fighting for the final spot. No, I personally don't think so. I think Leeds are going to sort themselves. I think Leeds are going to sort themselves out eventually, and they're going to make this thing a lot harder. And West Brom have done an incredible job to get to the stage they're at. So, I can't see us winning this league purely based off the again, going back to the inconsistencies that I talked about earlier. I don't think there's enough in this team to be able to outlast, barring this somehow Leeds' collapse lasting until the end of the season, which, as I've said, I don't see it doing. So, call me a pessimist, call me a realist. I don't know. Whatever it is, I don't think it will be.
I just think you're keeping your cards firmly close to your chest, like I would be too, mate. So yeah, I'm a realist as well, and I don't want to get too overly optimistic because it's just not the Fulham way, maybe. But anyway, thank you very much to my lovely co-host. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for listening. If you like what you hear, please spread the good word about us. We're on Twitter, we're on Spotify, we're on Instagram, we're on iTunes, we're on absolutely everything. So please tell all your friends about us, and we will be back. We'll be back with a quick reaction after the Millwall game with Frenchie at the helm. See you then.
Fulham.